Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Post-Military Podcast, where we share stories of veterans' transition out of the military and their advice to other service members based on their life experience. Whether you are still in service, a veteran, or just someone preparing to transition into a new chapter of your life, there is something here for you to learn. I've included timestamps in the description of the episode, so head down there to see if there are any topics that are of particular interest to you. Also, while you're poking around, subscribing to the channel or podcast on your favorite platform is always greatly appreciated. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Post-Military Podcast, the podcast where we give you stories and advice on how to transition to the next chapter of your life. With me today is someone that I'm very excited to talk about. He has explored a career that is very unique in something that you don't see often, coming as a veteran, coming out of the military and moving into regular life as an American. Before leaving the service, he was an infantry sergeant in the U.S. Army for 6 years. And then after that has explored a lot of different avenues in video production, where he currently owns a video production company called VVildwood, which will be linked in the description below. So I highly recommend you check it out. He does some amazing work that I want him to talk about during the episode, so I won't spoil it. But Cameron Cushman, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you being willing to come on to the show.
Billy, stoked, dude. Stoked for you having me on here. And man, I just love talking to people and chatting military and, especially talking military transition, and because everybody's looks so differently, and everyone's journey and story is so unique. Yeah, man. Where do you want to begin?
First, how long have you been growing that beard out?
Yeah, this time around, actually, hold on a second. We've got about 10 days from now or so. I don't know the exact date, but around 10 days from now will be 2 years for this time around.
Oh my gosh. I think for me, it would take like a decade to be able to grow something like that. Like this is as good as it gets right here for me.
No, it's funny, man. When I first got out, I was that guy, like when I was in, that was getting told I had to shave twice a day. Yeah. I don't think I ever did, but I was told I needed to, because by 5 o'clock I had the shadow, But when I first got out, I grew it out for about a little over 2.5 years. And I ended up shaving the beard off on April Fool's Day. And everyone thought that I had pulled like the best April Fool's Day joke they genuinely thought that I had recorded videos and photos of me saying, "Oh, I shaved my beard," way in advance. I wish I would have thought of that, but no, that was like ZZ Top level, man. The growth has started to slow down a good bit I know it's long, but compared to how fast it used to grow, we've dropped down in growth.
I mean, it's still super impressive, and I love for everyone out there, Cameron lives in Montana, so he's definitely got the look of a man who lives in Western Montana. So I love what you're doing with it. But what I want to get to first is tell everybody a little bit about your military career, and then what led to you exiting the service.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I joined the Army in 2010. So I shipped off to basic in August and that was at Fort Benning, Georgia. So for those who don't know, there's a few MOSs, and I don't know if this works or if this is in any other branch, but in the Army, there's a few different MOSs that have what's called one-stop unit training, or OSIT. Infantry is one of those. So basically your basic and your AIT is all at the same place. There is no break. I think you have 2 days between the two of them, but there's not like a difference in how you're treated. And so for infantry guys, they really test and change up like basic on it, what seems like every cycle. And so one cycle may be like what they would call like high speed, high stress, where you're in like red phase the entire time, where you're just getting smoked the entire period. And then the next group may come in and it may be, low stress, or theirs maybe 2 weeks longer. And so it's always like this test and learn with the infantry, it seems, with OSIT. But yeah, so I went to Benning, the home of the infantry. It's now called like the School of Excellence, which is lame. But yeah, so went there and then got orders to Fort Wainwright, Alaska, straight out of there with the 25th Infantry. And so was up there for about 4 years, did 12 months downrange out of Alaska. We went to Afghanistan, Zabul province, and we were mainly a QRF force, so a quick reaction force for EOD, primarily Navy EOD. So we did a lot of work with those guys with, roadside IEDs and whatnot. And then this is part of the story because it talks about the transition. We all got super sick during the deployment. And for those who are not aware, the majority of the water that you get in theater is bottled either within theater or within one of the surrounding countries, which doesn't make much sense from a safety standpoint. Because I know if somebody comes and invades America, I'm attacking the water first thing, And so we all got super sick, dysentery, and we're throwing up or crapping our pants like on patrol. And I mean, QRF, we're working 19, 20-hour days, and this is midsummer, so it's 125 degrees. We're in full kit, just dying. And I seem to have some lasting effects from that nobody could really figure out what was going on for quite some time until like probably a year after I got back to the States. But got back from the deployment and re-enlisted to stay in Alaska. I did have the plans of getting out at the end of my 6-year mark. So I had re-enlisted right around 3.5 years and wanted to extend to stay in Alaska. And for those who are not aware, Alaska is considered an overseas assignment. You have to get approval. It's not a CONUS. And it was approved. I was good to go. Typically, it's only people with families that are approved. And I was approved. My wife at the time was me, my wife, and our son. And my daughter, was she born yet? Maybe. She may have been just born or she was about to be born when we re-enlisted. But typical Army, about a year later, breaks contract and says, nah, dude. We're sending you to the cesspool of military installations. And they sent me to Fort Hood. Now, I mean, I say this anytime I talk to people about Fort Hood. You can Google all this yourself. Fort Hood it's known to be just a crappy place. It's not, all on leadership, obviously, but it's just everything about that place is, in my opinion, just below the standard. And now they've changed the name. It's Fort Cavazos now, I think. Anyways, Fort Hood's the last place any infantryman wants to go. And so infantry and Cav Scouts have this, we just make fun of each other, more so infantry making fun of Cav Scouts. And Fort Hood is like, that's where you go to be a Cav Scout, And nowadays the two MOSs basically do the same thing, but you got to give each other a hard time. So no infantry dude wants to go there. And I go and learned right off the bat it was just a different culture. A little context on that. Alaska falls under its own, like USAREC falls literally under its own regulations, rules, obviously because of cold weather and stuff like that. And the culture shock from going from Alaska to Fort Hood and going from, frankly, where we were still smoking dudes for discipline and counseling statements sure were a thing, but I get to Fort Hood and it's me and 2 other E5 show up the same day. And this is like the infantry culture, obviously, but we show up and some of our privates come up to us and, what's up, bros? And, so we're like, yes. I remember we were making them, they were doing burpees and some E7 comes running up and he's like, what's going on here? And we're like, corrective training, Sergeant. He's like, we don't do that here. We do counseling statements. I was like, damn, all right. But anyways, shortly after I got there, my health really started taking a turn for the worse. I was having real bad reflux, which, it's not super uncommon, but mine was to the point, like if I'm doing push-ups, like reflux is in my throat. And finally get in to see some specialists. They're putting me on every medication there is. They've diagnosed me with a hiatal hernia now. That's basically 1 out of 3 men will have one in their lifetime. So if you're listening to this and you're a guy, there's a huge chance you have one, especially if you have reflux. But mine was so large at that point where the top of my stomach was just wide open and, everything's just coming and going. End up being told I have to get a surgery and it's called Nissen fundoplication, right? And it's where you take you remove the hernias, you take the upper stomach and you wrap it around your lower esophagus and tighten that door. So it recreates a normal operating sphincter in your stomach. And they told me, oh man, you're going to be kicking down doors again in 2 months. No big deal. That was a lie. She goes in there and she finds a second hernia called the paraesophageal hernia. And that's a very rare hernia. It, over time, what it does is it grabs your stomach and twists it to death. And so she takes that down, does what she does. And then a few days later, after the surgery, I'm having like really hard time breathing. My chest is making noises. And so I go into the surgeon. I'm like, something's wrong. Can you please give me a barium, or could we do an upper endoscopy or some type of imagery to see what's going on? She's now, it's PTSD from the surgery, which is just comical. And it took me about a month of begging for a barium. Now, if anyone's ever done a barium, it's like drinking chalk, like chalk with some water. No one asks for a barium unless there's something wrong, and finally she gives me the barium. The x-ray tech is laughing as I'm doing it. He's, man, you should see the size of this hernia crushing your lung right now. And so the entire surgical site had failed. And what happened was the paraesophageal hernia came back, encapsulated the surgical site, and was crushing my lung.
Oh,
So they do an emergency upper endoscopy the next day, and they can't even get down. So the camera butterflies. So it basically hits my surgical site, turns back around. And so the same surgeon does my second surgery. And unfortunately, during that surgery, she severed my vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is one of the most important nerves in the body, pretty much controls everything there is to control. So think like, it controls like your entire endo system. And if you have a panic attack, and obviously like an average person has a panic attack, their heart rate spikes, they're breathing heavily. Say I have a panic attack. I could look at my watch and be like, oh, my heart rate is at a 63, because my body doesn't send the signals. But it comes with a bunch of other issues. So when she severed my vagus nerve, it paralyzed my stomach, which is called gastroparesis. So my stomach doesn't work anymore. We didn't know that she did this for a few months, because you're on like a water baby food diet for a while. And I try to make the story as fast as possible, but it's kind of hard.
No, keep going. This is crazy.
And so after my second surgery, I can't seem to drink water. I can't get it down at all. I won't go past my esophagus. And what's happening is my esophagus is having like severe spasms. And basically what that kind of would look like is your esophagus trying to throw up. So I physically can't throw up anymore due to my surgery, which sucks. But my esophagus will try. So basically it's like the esophagus squeezing from the bottom, trying to push whatever is in it out. And it in a sense, it's like a heart attack sensation, like radiates through your arms, through your entire chest. And so I'm having that really, really bad. I've become really hypoglycemic at this point from the damage. And I'm basically surviving off of Gatorade at this point. I just can't get water down, and end up in the hospital from the Gatorade, from like vitamin A toxicity. And finally, I'm like trying to learn how to eat normal food. Like mentally, I had to learn how to block out the spasms, because it was just so severe that you're like choking, but you're not. And, at this point, I'd gone from 195, super healthy, really fit infantry guy, to, 145, pretty much like dying. And once I finally started to eat again, I start looking like I'm 6-7 months pregnant. I'm severely bloated, in severe pain, beyond nauseous. And remember, I can't throw up. And so they're doing every study there is, trying to figure out what's wrong. Finally, they send me to a specialist. I do this radioactive egg test, where you eat this egg that's radioactive, and then you do imagery I think it's either every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes for 4 hours. It's basically watching, hey, how is your stomach emptying? And so a normal stomach, right? So the average human, their stomach would be fully emptied, either at 90% or greater empty rate at 4 hours. And I was at 0%. Oh, look, it's eggs, And so at that point, they diagnosed me with the gastroparesis and just basically assumed, all right, she did some damage to you. Now, mind you, military facility. There's a common misconception that you cannot sue. That isn't true. You can, but it's like never worthwhile. You rarely ever will get anywhere with it. And then if you do win, you're like disqualified from VA benefits. Now that may have changed. I know that was what it was at the time. I don't know what it is now, but that was, the case. The Fort Hood Medical Facility did go under investigation shortly after my thing. I don't think I was that cause, but I think I was like one of the 1,000 other people that probably had been,
My
botched.
goodness.
And so at this point, they send me to BAMC, which is a very large, military hospital. I think BAMC is primarily an Air Force base.
Yeah, they split time between the Air Force and the Army.
Yeah,
And then
Brooke Army Medical.
whoever the commander is, it switches from BAMC to like some other name.
Yeah.
Because the BAMC is the Army name, and then there's an Air Force name, and they literally just rotate depending on who's in charge.
Yeah. I think it's BAMC and it may be like SAMC. It's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
very
it is
similar.
SAMC. It is SAMC. Yeah.
And so I go to 2 Air Force docs. One's a surgeon, one's just a specialist. They're doing every test there is. At this point, I've had 15 upper endoscopies. My body is now craving and in a sense addicted to anesthesia because I've been put under so many times. And if I go to a hospital now, I can taste it in the air. It's quite strange. But I finally, this Air Force surgeon who is a Mayo Clinic guy, super squared away dude. He was like, so for those who don't know, especially civilians, the majority of the people who join the military as a surgeon are typically the lower scoring of the class, because why are you going to take, a job that pays 70 grand when you could take one that pays 500? And, that's not everyone. And the doctor that did my 3rd surgery was that guy who had a successful career at the Mayo Clinic and was like, man, I want to get back. And so I wish he would have did my 1st surgery, but he did my 3rd. And the 3rd surgery was like, without a doubt, the scariest because we didn't know what we were doing. And so the surgeon was like, hey, we're doing one of 3 surgeries. So we either go in, undo everything she's done in hopes that the hernia has like just managed to disappear. It won't come back. And you try to go to a normal and we'll figure out the reflux later. Or we take down everything she did, redo it. And then the 3rd option, which is the last option, the last resort, is a pyloroplasty. Pyloroplasty is when they take the bottom of your stomach and basically open the door, right? So right into your intestines. But pyloroplasty has like a lot of problems, causes severe dumping syndrome, which kind of is what it sounds like. Like you eat, you go to the bathroom 5 minutes later, but the name is more so on the fact that you're dumping all your nutrients. And so I think like your upper intestines hold a lot of your nutrients, right? I think it's above 60%. And when the food passes through, because it's not broken down, basically all the nutrients get plugged and pulled out. And so that causes like severe hypoglycemia and stuff like that. And unfortunately, had to do the pyloroplasty. So I didn't know this, until I woke up and he's like, hey, brother, here's the bad news, and there may be some people who ever if you're watching the video and you're seeing me smile as I tell this story, there is no other way to tell it anymore, man. I've been living with this for 8 years. Yeah, I could be miserable and play the, misery loves company card, but I can't live like that anymore. And so, man, obviously I was in a really, really dark place when all this happened. The Army obviously has now found me unfit for duty. And, I went from right before all my health issues, I was about to go to the E6 board at right around 4.5 years, which is pretty fast. Like I was no dirt bag. Yeah, dude, I'm not a dirt bag, and the second I had my first surgery, it's like, this guy's trash, useless. And that is part of the infantry mentality, right? Like if you can't perform, but they didn't have to go about it the way they did. And this played like a huge effect during my transition and my desire to want to do anything with the military community. But so they find me unfit, start going through the medical retirement process. I remember my initial rating with the VA, because they do it like when you're in, if you medically retire now. And so you have it. So there's like maybe a 1 month gap between pay. And I remember I had like a PA and I was supposed to have a specialist, because all my cases are these names that most doctors, I still have to tell them what it is. And I remember she's reading my thing and she's looking at her computer. She's eating food, by the way, in front of me during my rating, which I'm eating baby food at the time. And she's sitting there eating like spaghetti or something during her rating, VA. And she's gastroparesis. Don't you mean gastritis? And I was like, I wish that was my issue again, please help me. And she argued, she's, that's not a thing. And I was like, you got a computer, you're sitting on it right now, Google it, and she didn't. So they denied almost every rating I had. And I had just all the documentation, Army surgeon, severs vagus nerve, proven. This is what's happened. Backing up to that surgery, when he told me, he was like, the reason we had to do the third option, I've never seen somebody's inside so damaged from 2 surgeries. He's like, if I could say what you look like, it would be like a 700-pound person that was on their 9th gastric bypass, or some surgeon just gutted you with a scalpel. And, and he, like, that's how he described it to me. I'm pretty sure he did the hand thing and everything. And yeah, so that was obviously why he couldn't touch the surgical site. And so he said, your paraesophageal hernia is still there. It's back. And so it is still in me. It's trapped basically in the second surgery. And it's just like kind of a nipple that's pushing into my stomach now. And one day I'll fail. Does that failure look the same as last time where I can't breathe? Or does it come up into my throat and I choke to death on my stomach, right? I don't know. Hopefully it never fails. But if you've had one Nissen fail, they all fail after that. It just is when. And I've had some really close calls that have put me in the hospital that we thought was a complete failure. Unfortunately, it wasn't. But, and yeah, so obviously jumping back forward to the VA gave me a bunch of fake ratings like that I had never even heard of, denied a lot of things. And I got the, Army appointed lawyer to kind of help me out there. And the VA came back. We have great faith and trust in our appointed officials, and we stand by our rating. And I remember going to the VA after that clinic and walking in there and like freaking out. This is why dudes are killing themselves. And I remember there being first sergeants and majors sitting there around me, and they're just like, yeah, he's right. I was in uniform. I could have been thrown in jail, but it's the reality of, and not every VA is bad, obviously, but, they've given themselves the abuse they get on their own. And so anyways, medically retire, or I guess during my final months of transitioning out, my daughter at the time, she was a little younger than 3, and every day, can we go to the park? Can we go to the park? And every day I said, no, I couldn't, I can't, I'm dying, and woe is me. And I was, but I had had a seizure at this point from the hypoglycemia, severely hypoglycemic, and that's what will take me off this earth most likely. And one day she doesn't ask me. And that was the day I was like, damn, man, I'm a piece of shit. And I realized then, like, I needed to find something. I needed to change. And I knew I needed to get back outside and find my healing in the outdoors. And so I started, I got some friends together, and I was like, man, I'm going fishing. And they're like, you're going to die. And at least we'll be there to bring you home. And I'd pass out on the water a lot. But over a course of a few months, my glucose like kind of stopped dropping as extremely as it was. My nausea wasn't as bad. My pain wasn't as bad. And just for context, I'm nauseous 24/7. I'm in pain 24/7. It doesn't go away. It's been this way for 8 years. My anniversary for my 3rd surgery was 8 years ago, like 5 days ago. And there's nothing, no medication helps. I'm nauseous 24/7, nauseous right now. And for some reason, it seemed to not be as strong when I was outside. And I went to some specialists, and they were basically they did blood work for a few days while we were having good conversations, bad conversations. Basically, like, listen, in a sense, this is like a medical miracle. They're like, your endorphins are just giving you what you need at the time. And then when you are not participating, you just crash. Now, I could have a flare up outside. It happens all the time. It's not like my issues just vanish, but the outdoors is where I found this power. And, medically retired, moved back to Florida, and I wanted nothing to do with the military community or the veteran community. I despised everybody because I had this toxic leadership, nobody was there for me during it. And I know it would have been different if it would have happened to me when I was in Fort Wainwright. I know I would have been supported by my leaders, but it didn't. It happened at Fort Hood. And nobody besides a few of my peers were there for me. And got out, and I don't think I ever told people new people I met I was in the military. They're, what do you do? Oh, I take photos. I do video. And so obviously that comes up. Like, I was a photographer before I joined. And so during service, I still shot, and then started getting into video towards the end of my time in. But it was a few years later, 2019. Yeah. So 3 years later, I saw a veteran nonprofit taking dudes down the Devil's River, and the Devil's River was where I found my healing. in South Texas. Picture like the Florida Keys in the middle of the desert, but a river. And that's the Devils. Google it. Unbelievably beautiful. And I'm like, all right, I can appreciate this. So I reached out and I said, hey, I want to make a film for you. And he was like, he's a Cav Scout. So it's funny because we make fun of each other. And he was like, brother, I can't pay you. And I said, I'll do it for free, man. I'll figure out a way to get there. And by no means was I in the financial position to be doing something like this for free. And so fortunately, I found somebody who was getting married. And I was like, hey, man, I'll make a video for you. And they were getting married in Texas. And so I drove, and filmed the wedding and then made like the 7-hour drive to the Devils. And I remember being about a quarter of a mile away from the bed and breakfast that, we all meet at. And I'm at the stop sign and I was like, what am I doing? I don't want anything to do with this. And I turned around and I made it a few hundred yards. And then I was like, all right, you owe it to them. If there's somebody else who has a story that needs to be told, you need to go do it. And so I went, man, and that's what really started this journey for me with veteran organizations and getting back into the veteran community. And now I try to advocate as much as I can for, mental health, especially on the mental health side, about getting vets outdoors. And I ended up becoming a board member for that organization for about 4 years before I stepped down last spring. But yeah, that's kind of the start and how the transition happened, and then how I got back into the veteran community. And that's been super, super rewarding. I can break there for if there's a question about.
I mean, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And dude, first, holy shit, I'm sorry that's what you have and are going through. I don't know. I just met you, so I don't know how much I can really say that will matter. But
I appreciate it, man. I tell you this, man, you have a totally different outlook on people and on life after something like this, after developing like an invisible illness. And typically I would say mental health falls under there, but it's rarely like in the invisible illness community. You're typically hearing Crohn's, gastroparesis, autoimmune diseases, right? All the physical things.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people are called spoonies. And so you get 12 spoons a day of energy. How many do you use? I'm like -7 billion in the bank, but I use way too many spoons I don't have. But yeah, I now like when I'm driving around or I'm at a gas station or a store, I'm looking at everybody. I'm like, I wonder what their journey is. Oh, I wonder what that person that's parked in the handicap parking space has. Like before I had all this, if I saw somebody, like if I saw me parked in handicap and then walk into the store, I'm like, what a dirty bag, right?
Yeah.
I qualify for a handicap sticker. I'm never going to do it, but I could, And so I just have a different appreciation for a lot of things now. And, this is my life.
Yeah.
And so that's why I can sit here and smile about it. I could have gone the hard way and chose to be miserable. And I did for some time. And don't get me wrong, I have bad days, man. I've had really bad days and months. And I remember getting kicked out of an invisible illness support group because I posted a photo with my thumbs up at a doctor's office. And I said, there's always a way to be happy. Where I'd rather be miserable at a river than be miserable in my bed, because either way I'm going to be in the same damn pain. And I kid you not, the majority of the comments were, not everybody has the ability to be happy or be positive. No, you're wrong. Every single person does. It doesn't matter your situation. Deep down, there is something to be positive about in every aspect of life. Like it may be the stupidest thing, but you can,
Yeah.
So.
How do you feel like you got to a place where you were able to say that? Because you very rightly stated, like you could have chose not to be that way, and I would argue there's more people who choose to be miserable who have had way less bad times than you in life. And so how did you get to this place of positivity?
One, misery loves company, right? That is the truest thing on earth. People who, man, I just go on Instagram, go #gastroparesis, and then go and look through the average post. It's a selfie with a miserable face. Like literally like, my life sucks. Yeah, it does. I'm not questioning the pain that you're in right now. And I'm not underplaying the daily struggle you go through, but that doesn't have to be everything you focus on. Try to find the good things. And again, man, I have bad days, but there is still good things out there regardless. But it would go back to my daughter. The day my daughter didn't ask me, I was like, I need to do something. And now granted, I still was in like a terrible headspace for quite some time. And I would almost say it really was like my big turnaround point was when I did start helping out veterans and getting there. But man, I just realized, dude, I can either suck or just suck while driving forward, and I've always tried to push myself way past what I'm supposed to. I mean, at the time I was told by doctors, I'm supposed to have a feeding tube. I'm supposed to have a gastric pacemaker. They told me I needed TPM hookups. I denied every one of those. The pacemaker, me and the Mayo Clinic guy decided like my pain tolerance was way too high at that point after living with it for 6 months that it would make no sense because it's a surgery for a gastric pacemaker and you got to go in and turn it up every year and it wouldn't make sense for me. But the feeding tube, man, I was down at 140, even though I couldn't throw up, I struggled just to consume food. And I denied all of those. I'm at a weight that's, I'm probably a little underweight, but obviously I have a lot of issues with nutrients. My B12 is always really, really bad. I have to do injections every 2 weeks. My vitamin D is trash. My white blood cell count's always, and it's not where it should be, but I'm living the best life that I possibly can, in my opinion. And especially in the past, I've always tried to just go hard, and because I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And me and my wife had those hard conversations. There's a chance I die out on some mountain one day and, alongside some creek. But I showed my kids that for 8 years, I didn't let this disease control me. Every doctor told me I'd never work again and I'd never do anything again. And I'd be on a hospital bed or my bed for life. And I showed them, no, that's not going to be me. And I pay for it. There's no doubt about that. But and again, the glucose thing, that's like my biggest issue. Like my body doesn't recognize it anymore. So I've got this constant glucose monitor that I check myself. And like right now I'm at, a good number, but it's random. It can be reactive to what I eat, but a lot of times it'll just do its own thing. And before, it took me 7 years to get that from the VA. And my glucose would hit like 20 and 30, 3, 5, 6 times a day. You die at 0. Anything below 50, you're burning brain cells. You're at risk of a coma. Why did it take 6.5, 7 years for the VA to give me this? Poke your finger every 5 minutes. Nobody can do that, and it's unrealistic, but finally got it. And so it's helped a lot because my body doesn't feel the lows anymore. And so this allows me to catch it, but when it works. But yeah, man, recent years, I've just realized like I want to do the hardest things possible, man. I do ice baths every day. And that's actually helped me dramatically with my nausea and my flare-ups. Like it's been the greatest improvement. And from a mental health standpoint, that's been phenomenal. And I'm always chasing what's going to help me, right? What's going to make my life better from a mental health standpoint. And I'm easily influenced. This may be a good segue into the filmmaking side, but I recently was filming for Stop Soldier Suicide. I'm sorry. That was earlier. I was filming for Semper Fi in America's Fund at the Marine Corps Marathon. And man, I ran once, I think, since I've gotten out because I was told I just can't do that kind of stuff. And I am at this marathon and I'm filming people cross the finish line. I'm like, oh, damn, dude. I don't know if you've ever been to a marathon or especially the finish line. It is such a powerful and emotional experience. I'm like crying for every human running by, and I am not an emotional person. My wife actually hates that about me, is she's never seen me cry. And I'm sitting here, oh my gosh, look at this human crossing this this 26 miles, right? Holy hell. And so obviously right then I was like, I'm running a marathon next year. And here we are, dude. We're 3 months since I started running in November. I told myself I would not quit. And I ran a lot in December. And January, I set a goal. I will do at least 1 mile of cardio every single day for the month. And so far, I'm at, I want to say, 37 miles for the month so far. And we're 33 or something like that. And we're only 10 days in, baby.
Congrats.
And so I'm paying for it, obviously. Like my flare-ups have been a little more than usual, but I'm showing my kids like, damn. And they probably don't even think I have health issues anymore, but one day, when they're older, they're like, holy shit, this dude, like he's doing what he preaches. He was doing hard things that
Mhm.
he shouldn't be doing. And yeah, man, I'm just trying to live my best life, be as healthy as I can, inspire other people that are in that rut that I was in when
Mhm.
I was, and going
That's
through that
amazing.
transition.
What marathon are you running?
Yeah, so I'm registered for the Missoula Marathon. It's
Okay.
in the end of June. My longest run so far in my training has been 10 miles, which is my longest run ever. I think the longest run I ran in the Army was 8. So I've done a 10, and yeah, I think I'm gonna be. Obviously, I don't know. Shit goes wrong with me all the time, but um, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna finish it if I'm crawling across.
That's
So
amazing.
I'm not. I'm gonna do
Okay.
it.
That's awesome. Good luck. I'm
Jay, man.
excited to see the video when you cross the finish line. That'll be
Heck,
fantastic.
heck yeah, dude.
So,
Heck yeah.
tell me more about getting into like production. Why did you start it? What about it appeals to you? And yeah, cuz very I feel like, I mean, there's a couple of those like veteran people that get out and then they do all of like the military, like do all the military shots and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
I don't see as many folks doing what you're doing. And so what about photo video speaks to you and is
Yeah.
the kind of your passion?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, man, I was doing photography beforehand, and kind of when video was coming into the more affordable market in terms of when they first were putting like 1080 good quality stuff in like the digital SLR platform. I was like, man, I probably should learn this. But for me, my drive has always been there needs to be a story, right? Like I can take a pretty photo for a commercial stuff pays the bills. I love doing commercial work, but if I can tell a story through a photo or through a video that sheds light on something, or that shares somebody else's story and it has the ability to impact somebody else, that's it for me, man. And you know, you said I'm trying to think of all the vets that I know that are creatives. A few of them were creatives in the service, like the Army and Air Force, like combat photographers, or whatever each branch calls them. And I know a few of those that have continued in. But interestingly enough, the people that I know that have been the most successful in a creative field after they got out have been infantrymen, or like soft dudes like SF, and those kind of guys. Oddly, like not something you really would expect it, because I get it all the time. Oh, did you do that in the military? I'm like, oh no, I was a grunt. And they're just like, oh, what? you know? And dude, a huge part of my filmmaking is just emotional storytelling, right? Like if you look at my video and you compare it to a lot of the video that's out there, the video looks, what's the word that everyone could relate to here that's not just like a creative? The video doesn't look perfect, right? Like there's imperfections in the character of the video. And what I mean by that is, instead of me throwing a brand new modern day lens onto my, camera system, whatever I'm running, I'm going to go buy a $50 lens or a $150 lens. It's from 1965 that was made in the Soviet Union, that's literally radioactive because the background is all super distorted. And for me, and that's just my style. So like a lot of people who watch my stuff, they like, oh, that's Cameron's work because it's imperfect. But that's what's needed for the work that I'm doing, especially in the veteran space, right? Our careers, what we've done, like none of it's perfect. Our lives aren't perfect. And you could go to say that for, everybody in life. But when I'm sitting down with a veteran, and you always hear like the horror stories of like reporters or like civilian agencies that like film vets, and they're like, so tell me about the war, son. How many people did you kill? And I've literally sat in those conversations like I was hired to be the filmmaker, and they were so insistent that their staff member, ask a question. They asked that, and I'm just like, oh, here we go. You don't ask these things, and for me, I developed very quickly, because I've had a lot of vets in front of my camera now, and I developed really quickly. I don't really have any questions for you. I'll tell you like, hey, listen, tell me your name, what branch, what MOS, what you did, and then the rest is yours. You can talk as much about your military career as little, and then just tell me where you are in life now. And there's some people that need not coaching, but they need to be guided. They'll be like, I was in the Marine Corps. And then they look up at you, what's next? There's those, but not as often as you think. The majority of people that sit down in front of me, I literally say my opening thing, and they'll be like, I don't know how much I have for you. And 40 minutes later, they are still talking. And I'm just sitting there, and as a filmmaker, today's world sucks. TikTok is so popular. And don't get me wrong, like I could sit on TikTok all day, but attention spans are like 3 seconds now. And so I don't want to make a 3-second video. I'm trying to make a video that's 5 minutes. And so I see, man, people on the video for a minute and then it's like, and so it's always like the struggle. Hey, how do I put the most impactful into the start of this so everyone stays? But if I can impact one person from my film, for example, I did a film called Weightless with a veteran. His name's Ben. He was a infantryman, did 2 tours to Afghanistan, and we were on a veteran nonprofit program out in California fly fishing. And it was the last day when I did the interview with him. And he's sitting there and he's, everything in nature has its place. The life, the death, all of it knows where it belongs here. And I just need to find where I fit in with that. And as somebody who preaches the outdoors and the amazing healing powers that they have, that hit me to my core. And I quote it all the time. And that film is still, in my opinion, that film's still on my website. It'll probably never go away. There's a lot of things technically that I hate, but the message, and I've received a few phone calls from other vets that stumbled across it that I didn't know. One of them messaged me on Instagram, was like, hey, could I call you? And I was like, yeah, dude, want to make sure this dude's in a good place. And I didn't know who he was. And he called, man, I stumbled across your video on somebody shared it. And he quotes what Ben had said. And then he just hits me, man. I was going to kill myself this morning. And obviously I go right into this, brother, what can I do? What resources can I get you? Can I get you somewhere? And he's, no, man, like the film, what Ben said saved my life. I literally just stepped outside and took a deep breath in and all of a sudden heard the birds and the bugs. And is there something out here for me? And, and I had a phone call about a year later for the same thing. And that's just who I know. And so, man, to hear something like that and to know that, it's not necessarily, I didn't have that impact. I gave another veteran the doorway and the window to have that impact to other people, right? I gave them the avenue. And so it's just naturally progressed to, to where 90% of my business is in the veteran world, whether that's a veteran owned business. One of my biggest clients is a Wagyu operation, Ranger Bat dude. He'd be a good person to have on your podcast. And or if it's a nonprofit, right? And it could be a big nonprofit like Stop Soldier Suicide. I did some work for them last April with a really good buddy of mine, Kerry. He's an Air Force guy himself. And now he's like a big time executive producer, does phenomenal work. Another guy you should have on the podcast because he's a really talented creative. And he's now doing his own thing. I'm so proud of him. But especially coming out of the New York City agency world, like that's hard to leave with, good money, and that's a lot of networking and resources. It's a big deal when you get to that level in your career. And he's now going freelance. But working with big organizations like that on commercial spots to try to target more vets, through ads, and then going down to, I try to donate, a few trips a year of my time if I have the funds that, or I'm not strapped and I'm not losing work. I've done, 2 trips for the Two Wolf Foundation, a really young organization. And, those are, I'm not even, I hate to say a loss, but, financially, sure, they're a loss, but I'm gaining, new friends, new brothers, new sisters on these trips. And at the end of the day, I'm given a window and a doorway for these people to tell their story. So it's very rewarding. And that's my big thing now. I'm going to quote I'm going to brain dump his name, but he was a retired sergeant major out of the Marine Corps, but he's the last guy that speaks in my Semper Fi Fun video, but I think his first name's Carnell. Anyways, he says, one of the greatest things you can do after you have transitioned out of the military and once you've found your healing in your way is to give back. That's it, man. Like,
So when you're going out and you're filming these documentaries, you spoke about the one doc that was really impactful for you. Do you have any other films or moments that have really stuck out to you that you want to share?
yeah, yeah. I think it was one of my last films I did when I was with the Iron Freedom Foundation when I was a board member. I take that back. There may have been a few films after that, but it was one of the most powerful films, and it's called brain dump here. This is this fog I get all the time, but I'm forgetting what the film is called. But the film, in essence, it was right after the fall of Afghanistan, and so that was like a really really tough time for dudes who were coming out, of this 20-year war, and they're like, why did I lose my friends? Why did I lose my legs? Why am I still here? And these are like questions that we were hearing all the time. I'm getting all these phone calls, and so I did a film on that trip, and I wanted to open it as like creative as I could. And so I pulled a bunch of sound bites from like various news articles about the fall, and they're mentioning, suicide rates have now surpassed in-country deaths, with GWAT vets. And then it hits healing in nature, the most easiest word that it just, that was what it's called. But and then it opens up with the founder, like very emotional. He's crying and I'm failing. I can't help enough people. I don't have the funds. I don't have the resources. And that was a really, really powerful one from an editing standpoint. Like, they're always so powerful and they mean so much when I'm there on the ground filming with these guys. And I try to be like, you know, maybe the first 5 minutes they feel like, all right, somebody's clearly, here filming me. But after that, people forget I'm there and I'm just another guy there, because I get it. I know the experiences. I've lived them. And yeah, that one, healing in nature, was a really powerful one. What else do we got here? Yeah, I mean, yeah, a commercial piece that I did for Casey Cattle Company, the Wagyu operation. That's one of my favorite pieces. Again, filmed it with a Soviet lens, like it's very far from perfect, but that's what it needed. And he's just talking about doing the hard right over the easy wrong, like doing the right thing. It's, it may be harder, but it's the right thing. And there's been a lot of powerful things I've been able to do. And as a newer hunter in the past few years, I did a hunting film. It's the only one I've done for a double amputee, and he never thought he would hunt again. And he's in a track chair, and he took down a mule deer, and that was a very powerful, really emotional. Like, I think 360 yards, and just down, man, and that was really powerful. There's been a lot of really really awesome things I've been able to tell and stories, and not all of them are obviously like in the veteran space. I'm working on a passion project now, telling a young woman's story. She's in her 30s and she was not a vet, young mother, had a kid at 18 in back-to-back abusive, both physically and emotionally abusive relationships, and never thought she'd get out. And a friend was like, hey, you want to go run on a trail? And she was like, not really, but sure. And she found peace trail running. And now she's training for this running up for air race on Mount Sentinel in Missoula. And she should do around 30 miles in 12 hours with over 15,000 feet of elevation gain. And that's her piece. And so that's a passion project for me I'm working on now. I'll lose probably $1,000, out of the travel, and obviously way more if you want to factor time and stuff. But if it can help one other, woman that's lived that and they can find trail running or something out of it, amen.
That's amazing. And it's just so incredible to listen to you talk about how aggressively you're pursuing these passions and these things that you want. It's really inspiring. Like, to be completely honest with you, it's really incredible that you've done so much in a scenario in which someone told you were going to do so little, and that's amazing. And I don't think that that can be understated enough. So yeah, like, this is blowing me away. That's really all I'm saying. But the next thing I wanted to ask you is, so you start Wildwoods.
Mhm.
What was it like for you stepping out and starting your own business?
Yeah. So I've done it twice now. So right when I got out, I formed my first LLC, which was just my name. And as a creative, you reach crossroads when do you go production company or do you brand yourself? And I'm actually in this weird phase now where I'm kind of wanting to go back to just my name. Not really. We'll get there. So the first time around, formed a LLC and was doing a lot of passion projects, just trying to build this portfolio, right? Did a film that I contribute to getting most of my work. Me and a buddy did a 8,000 mile, literally 7,992 miles drive to California and back, chasing native trout across the West, fly fishing. And I made a 2-minute film. And that film I contribute to giving me all the work I've ever gotten because it gave me the next stepping stone. And then that gave me the next, and so on and so forth. And so I did that. And, about 4 months later, somebody reaches out to me from a magazine's like, hey, would you like to produce a TV show for the Outdoor Channel? And I was like, I've never done a TV show, but I'll do it. And so I produced a TV show for the Sportsman's and Outdoor Channel. And this is my mistake as an entrepreneur. And just something to always consider is when you get that one amazing contract that pays really well, don't think that everything's going to go perfect in life. Don't put all your eggs in that basket. And that's what I did. I put all my eggs into the show. I still was marketing here and there. I didn't even put my name at the end of each episode. You could watch the show and you wouldn't know who made it. What an imbecile. Like, what just idiot. And I wasn't really proud of the show. That's a whole nother story, just based off of they told me I had creative freedom and then took it away. But I put all my eggs in that basket. All my other clients were smaller, and man, being told, you're never going to do anything. And now I've got some good income. Me and my wife are probably and our kids are living a life we probably shouldn't be living. We're going out to eat more frequently. I'm paying for the 13 cars behind me at Starbucks because I'm like, yeah, and I now think, damn, I could have used that money. And man, when the world changed in 2020, the show was like, hey, dude, we ain't moving. We can't move forward. Every company's pulled out. And so I went from making really, really good money to nothing. And so I'm calling every past client, hey, man, let's market some good stuff. And they're like, sorry, brother, we've got nothing. And so I'm starting to look in the full-time world, and everyone is. Hollywood is. I'm competing against people with 5 or 6 Emmys. And I'm applying to a trailer company as a video producer, and I'm having no luck. And so a company finds me on Instagram, and they're like, hey, you want to move to Missouri? We're looking for somebody. And I laughed. I was like, Missouri just is not on the list, man. But after some negotiations, me and my wife sat down. We really don't have an option. So we moved to Missouri, and I went into the full-time world for about 2 years. I still was building the relationships freelance, right? And I actively was building relationships while I was working full-time. And that's something that, like, man, relationship building or networking is key. I took every opportunity to talk to every person across every department. Anytime there's a trade show, hey, I'll go. Anytime there's a traveling shoot, I'll go. I'm making relationships with everybody, knowing, hey, I can do freelance work for them eventually. And so I left that company in 2022. Yes. And I went to another company to be a creative strategist for a very large company in the food space, had a team and had a very large creative budget. We had a $10 million budget for creative work. And I was like, this is it. And that job ended up not being what it was at all. The job they hired me for, they basically just wanted somebody to sit in a role. I'm not the guy that can sit there and do nothing. And, separated, went a different direction. And I was like, man, at this point, I'm like almost afraid to go freelance again, and my wife's, babe, dude, just go work for yourself again. And that day I was like, all right. And so I'm like, I'm writing down names for all these businesses. And I almost went into business with a very close friend of mine. And I'm glad I didn't, because going into business with a friend can be a very risky thing. Like, it's very easy to lose friendships. And I think that would have actually put a big dent on our relationship, just because I knew how that world works. And so I'm coming up with names, and I really loved Wildwood. It is a very common name. There's nothing special about it by any means. And if you like, you type in Wildwood Films or Wildwood Photography, it's probably a wedding photographer or wedding filmmaker. But I just loved it so much, I couldn't get away from it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like scribbling Wildwood, and I remember one of my W's didn't connect in the middle, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can just use two V's. And so my wife was like, Wildwood, like you said earlier. And so I was like, dude, that's it. And it's a conversation starter. Sure, there may be people who may not find my website, because some people still look at the business card and think it's a W, but I always make it a point, okay, it's Wildwood with two V's. And so I was like, you know what? We're just going to do it. So I formed the LLC again for this. I dissolved my original LLC, which I don't know why I didn't just
Keep it.
like rebrand, but it was like a new me, and I knew that I wanted to get to more of the agency level where I had people under me. And so still now I'm the only paid like full-time employee but from my agency, but I subcontract out to, 10 people work when I don't have the capacity or I need to bring people on for a job that's, a larger production. And some of those people are, on the website that I work with. And I remember I used my connections the day that I started it, because I was like, I need money, and the day I started, I made some phone calls, and I locked in a $50,000 contract that day, like the day after that I got the official EIN, and it doesn't work for everybody, but I had the experience, I had the background, like I was capable, and it just took networking properly. And man, from there, it's exploded. I have to turn down work, which probably, I think about it often, it's probably not smart. I probably should just hire somebody who can take a lower paying thing and then either take a small, 5 or 10%. Most companies would probably take 30 or 40, but I'm not that guy, because it's expensive to live right now. And I don't want to be the dude that's, cutting somebody out too much. And yeah, man, it's been awesome this time around, and I haven't put all my eggs in one basket. And, if the world goes crazy again, I'm not really worried about, like having to go back into the full-time world. It could happen, but I see a lot of my peers right now going full-time, a lot. I see people that have a lot of work coming in or did that are now like, I've got nothing. And man, I think it just comes down to networking, dude. I talk about the power of LinkedIn all the time, especially if you're taught, like, I'm speaking to creatives here, somebody who wants to, this goes to anybody, don't just share whatever your work is. Like, I could share all my videos and all my photos, and yeah, sure, it's pretty, but it's easy to forget if there's no story or connection behind it. And that's like where I preach LinkedIn all the time, is tell personal stories on LinkedIn. Like, probably 4 out of the 5 posts a week I post are like my part of my story or some other veteran story. And then I'll sprinkle in, hey, I make films, let's work together. And yeah, man, this year is just lining up to be my best year ever as a freelancer. And, where I was able to bring my wife back, out of the workplace. So she's doing the stay-at-home mom thing, and we've got 4 kids, and, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. Do you have any big plans for this year?
Yeah, man. I'll have this passion project wrapped up sometime in February that I'm working on. I'd like to do a few more throughout the year. I've got some really good stuff in the works with some phenomenal organizations. A little too early to talk about, the details of those, but going to be working with a few more veteran nonprofits, some past clients that I've worked with, and just being able to help tell stories and diversify what they're putting out content wise and kind of give them the edge over, what other people do. And it's a hard time to be a nonprofit right now, man, especially in the veteran world. There's 40,000+
There's a lot of
veteran
us.
nonprofits, and there's a billion vets, that need to be served. But every veteran nonprofit is fighting for funds, and how do you separate yourself? And how do you, if you're not evolving, man, you're dying. Right. And so, yeah, man, I'm just stoked to tell more vet stories this year, man. I want to tell some really powerful stories. I'm trying, and I'm going to make it happen. But I'm doing a film on Natasha this year.
Natasha's amazing.
It's happening.
She's a beast. And dude, I told her during our podcast, there's a race in Tennessee called the Barclays Marathons.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should do this. No woman's ever finished it. I told her if she decides to do it to call me, and I'll crew for her for the race.
Heck yeah. We're trying to come up with some way that I can tell one of her race stories. And if I can't get to a race, we'll just do a short doc and we'll get her training and stuff like that. And I know she's coming out to Montana a few times, wanted to crew for some people, and then I think she's doing a race out here as well. So we're gonna make that happen.
Can't wait.
I'm excited. Really.
Oh, go ahead. No,
I was gonna say I'm really excited. A good buddy of mine, I convinced him to move out to Montana because I haven't been here long, and there's a really good veteran community here. And he was in a real bad place, like just emotionally. Was at a company everyone wants to work for, but it wasn't good for him. And so he just took a job with Heroes and Horses out of Bozeman, and super stoked that he'll be here. He's a really good buddy of mine, one of the nicest dudes on earth, and he needs to have a good community surrounding him. So that's really good for him. And I'm just trying to celebrate other people's successes, man. I'm trying to do that. I love it. Dude.
It's really, I mean, to be external, to show external gratitude is like, it's so awesome. And it's such a, it's such a bummer to just to hate on other people's success. So I definitely agree. So why did you go out to Montana besides the fact that it's the greatest? Did you watch Yellowstone and you were like,
yeah. So funny enough, Yellowstone is filmed. Did you know Yellowstone's filmed like
close?
Literally the ranch is.
You bump into Kevin Costner yet?
No, I haven't. The ranch is 5 minutes from my house. So people who don't know, everyone thinks the show is filmed near Yellowstone. We're not near Yellowstone, and the ranch is literally like 190 acres that they film it on. It's not the million plus, but yeah. So the humidity and heat really bothers my health. It sends me into real bad flare-ups, and a flare-up can last from a few hours to a month. And I'm in a hospital, typically in the hospital during the point of a flare, because I just
can't.
I'm like severely just not in a good space, like physically. And so when we moved to Missouri, we thought it would potentially get better. Missouri is hotter and more humid than Florida.
It's real bad.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It's real bad.
Yeah.
It's in the summer, and then the ticks, man. Don't even get me started on how bad ticks are in the Midwest. But maybe I've got an irrational fear, but I'm not trying to be allergic to red meat or have Lyme disease.
Yeah, I was about to say you have enough. You have enough on your plate right now.
I don't want none of that. And so I knew out west that's always where my peace is, man. The place that I am most happy and where mentally I am like fully released is the Eastern Sierras of California. I probably won't ever live in California, but the Eastern Sierras is like where I call home mentally. And my wife, she did love Vero, our town in Florida. She would have gladly moved back there. And she also really liked the hill country of Texas. It's not the same Texas that she remembers, and so I was like, we're going to move west eventually. Is that Utah? Is that Idaho? What is that? And Dan Horgan, you had him on the podcast, a very close friend of mine. Dan, when he was with Task and Purpose, wrote an article on the nonprofit that I was with and Two Wolf Foundation and Heroes and Horses. And so I messaged Brian Flynn from Two Wolf, and I said, hey, brother, we got to do some stuff together. And I ended up leaving that organization, but I reached back out. I said, hey, man, let me do a film for you. And so I came out to Montana in the last few days of May of last year. And I came in during what would be like an ugly time. It was super foggy. You couldn't even see the mountains as I was coming down the valley. I came across the pass from Salmon, Idaho, and I'm driving along this river the whole way. And I'm like, all right, this may be it. And it just, as the trip went on, we had some bluebird days, and it just confirmed it. And I remember I got home. I was like, babe, we're moving to Montana. And she was like, and I was like, no, I'm serious. And we homeschool our kids, so it's easy to be spontaneous. And I was like, no, I'm serious. Let's figure out a goal. What's the time frame? I was like, what about next month? And she was like, how about in 3 years? And I was like, what about a year? She's 3 years. So we originally had this 3-year goal. Mind you, this was in June of last year. And I'm like, our 11-year anniversary, pretty sure 11. Yes, 11 years. She's like, where do you want to go? And neither me nor my wife gamble or drink, but we both have a fascination with Vegas. And I brought her for the first time for our 10-year anniversary. So she's, let's go back to Vegas, because it's just so fascinating, the concept of Vegas, how it even exists where it does. And I was like, I was thinking, what if we go to the mountains? And I'm just trying to sneak this in. And she's like, you're just trying to convince me to move there. And so I'm like, no, babe, you just got to see it. And we come out here, and the first day she's, no, dude, I don't see it. It reminds me of Alaska. And so what I mean by that, and it's a thing in Alaska, and I think it's like cold mountain places are like this. You'll see a beautiful house, and then next to it, it's like, is it safe? And that you see it all around Western is. I mean, it's common in Montana and Alaska. And I don't know if it's like in the winter, all the snow covers the cars that are all in the yard, because it's always like 30 cars in the yard and people forget about it. And so after a few days, she's like, all right, I see it. Let's set a realistic goal. And I was like, all right, what's the realistic goal? It still should be 3 years. So I was like, all right, what about July 1st of 2024? She's okay. If we find the right house, that's the only way. And I was like, done. And then I literally flew back home. And then the next day I left to drive back out here for work. And so obviously when I'm here, I'm like, babe, come on, we got to get out here soon. And so I'm talking to friends. She's still not happening. I'm talking to friends, and they're all like, listen, if the perfect rental pops up here, you can't pass it up. If a rental allows animals here, you need to do it. And in August, this house that we're sitting in right now popped up, and I called her and I was like, what's it going to take? I was like, this is my story. She's like, it's yours. And so I literally told my wife, I was like, hey, we have a house in Montana. Do you want it? She's just so much for next year, huh? And I was like, babe, I need, your support. I'm not going to move you out there and be miserable. She's, you lead this home, and I know what's best for you, and I want to be out there too. So I'm going to leave the decision up to you. And I said, all right, let's do it. And we moved out here October 1st. Was it smart from a mental health standpoint, and from the sake of living in one of the most beautiful places? My kids always want to go outside and do all these amazing things. 100% best decision. But the fact that my house in Missouri still hasn't sold, that sucks. So paying for 2 homes right now is not fun. We're doing it, but yeah, dude, best decision ever could have made as a family. And I have no plans of ever leaving here. I think I'll die somewhere in these hills, hopefully a long, long, long time from now.
I mean, if you're talking about enjoying being outside and being in nature, like the Bitterroot Range where you're next, like it doesn't get more wild than where you're at right now. Like that's some crazy terrain. But you picked a good spot for sure. I'm a huge fan of where you live, and the fly fishing's fantastic. So there's that. It's funny that you talked about the Eastern Sierras. My favorite place to go fly fishing in the world is next to Bishop, California. It was the first place I ever went fly fishing. I caught 15 fish on the first day. 7 of them were golden trout. And I didn't really understand like what that meant from a fly fishing perspective. And then
the pinnacle.
I know. And then I told someone, they're like, what? And they're like, where? And I was like, is that a big deal? And they're like, you have no idea how crazy that is. And so if you ever want to come out here, let's go fishing. I'll show you. I can guarantee that you will find golden trout.
Listen, brother, the golden is my favorite fish on earth. I've caught thousands of those things. I will never say no to a golden trout trip. Me and one of my closest buddies, we typically do, last year we didn't because of this move, which like breaks my heart, but we typically do a trip every single year out to the Eastern Sierras. We typically get an Airbnb right in the Alabama hills at Lone Pine. And then we'll do a good bit of our fishing right in that range. Sometimes we'll burn south and then back up over kind of to the other side, but primarily targeting goldens, dude. And then, tiny streams catching fish this big. And that's mentally where I'm the happiest. And then we'll go up to Mammoth, fish some of the bigger rivers, the Owens, Hot Creek, and target some of the smaller bodies of water for some of the other, fish out there. And yeah, dude, that's my jam,
That's
dude,
sick.
for sure.
I
That's my
love
jam.
that, man, so much.
I brought a lot of vets out there, man. A lot of vets out there, and introduced them to fly fishing.
It's a beautiful place, and like the fishing's incredible. So I completely get that. Is fly fishing like your primary outdoor jam? You said you were getting into hunting, but what's like the pinnacle of outdoors for you?
Yeah, definitely fly fishing. But I will say, man, running is catching up very quickly.
I was about to say,
dude, I don't know what it is, man. I've always been a decent runner. I'm taller, I'm 6'1", but I've got long legs. But, in the infantry, when you're running, you're either yelling at somebody or somebody's yelling at you. And, it's not the most fun thing. And, dude, I've had 2 bad runs since I started running in November. Like, every run I'm hitting a runner's high almost right away. Dude. And I'm just like in this euphoric state, loving life. Dude, and there's times I'll be running down like Main Street in Hamilton, like singing out loud, like to my music, and people, and I'm running in shorts because I overheat real easily, and I'm running in shorts. And it's like the other day we had this just massive snowstorm coming through, and people are just like, what the heck? And I'm just sitting there, hey, bro, So the running is catching up, man, real quick.
I love it.
But fly fishing, that's, especially in the Eastern Sierras, man, it's, dude, I couldn't.
Are you one of those insane people who have like books on entomology and tie your own flies?
No, so I do tie my own flies. I don't have any of the books. So, I'll say most of my fly fishing is spent in the native waters for fish. So I'm typically going up to headwaters, like as far away from civilization. I've got nothing against brown trout. They're fun, but most people don't know browns are not even native to North America. They're native to Germany. They were stocked like once, besides like warm water places. And that, like in Montana, they stocked them once and now they just naturally reproduce, but they're still not native. Super fun to catch. But like, I live 5 minutes from the Bitterroot River, but I also live 5 minutes from tiny no-name streams that have native West Slope cutthroat trout. And I'm always going to promote the native fish over the non-natives, like rainbows and browns. But yeah, I like the small fish, man, especially like that's my jam in the Eastern Sierras is getting to those tiny creeks. There's a creek that we fish outside of Mammoth that's very special to me. It's literally the widest portion of the creek is maybe 18 inches with the average being about 8 inches wide. Wow. And anyone I've ever brought there is like, there's no fish in here, brother. And I'm like, I assure you there are. And there's fish in there like this.
That's crazy.
And the creek is literally like this. It's a really special place and they're all native in there. And one day they'll probably be gone because people are running over it with dirt bikes and 4-wheelers and cows are making their way up there. But yeah,
that's awesome.
I love the little stuff.
So one of the last questions I want to ask you before we wrap up, what is your advice for people trying to get in, especially veterans who are trying to get into the outdoors? I think that for some people, like there's like hiking and everyone, like hiking's great, but like these things like hunting or fly fishing, it almost feels like there's this barrier to entry. And I feel like the obvious advice is go find a nonprofit that'll help get you into it. But do you have any other advice for people who are like, man, this Cameron guy's sick and I want to do what he's doing? Like, how do I do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I've got advice for that. But one of my biggest like pieces of advice that people tend to skip over, especially vets, because we always are chasing. I mean, this is why so many vets like are dying in motorcycle accidents. You're chasing the adrenaline, and it's okay just to go for a hike. I shouldn't even say that because I say that somebody's, I'm doing Kilimanjaro next week. It's okay to go for a walk. Do some local nature trail. It doesn't need to be in the mountains. It can be anywhere, wherever you've got a local park. Like that's okay. But I will say, obviously, especially for the fly fishing side, organization like Project Healing Waters is a great place to start because it's not as hard to get in with them because they have so many programs across the nation, like in every state, versus going to a smaller organization where you got to wait. They're going to have a lot more stricter requirements and stuff like that. and this is just a fact of vets, man. And it's one of the reasons why IFF did things a little differently with how we operated. We're too proud a lot of times. And so a vet will sit here and be like, man, I want to fly fish, but there ain't no way in hell I'm going to a fly shop and telling somebody I don't know how to fly fish already, or, say they go on a trip and they learn how to fly fish, but then afterwards they're like, I don't know what to buy. And so they'll stop doing it because they were too afraid to ask for help. Man, if you're near some body of water, and there's people fishing, just go up to them, I'm an extrovert, so it's obviously a little different, but I've never met somebody like fly fishing that's, hey, can you help me? And they'd be like, no, call me, man, just call me and I'm gonna put you in the right direction. Yeah, there's, obviously, hunting is a little different. I self-taught myself how to bow hunt. I never have hunted with a rifle. I wanted to hunt on public land with a bow, and I was successful my first season. I harvested 2 animals off public, but man, watch a lot of YouTube. There, you can read books. It's not my thing for fly fishing and stuff. Like, I've read all the fly fishing books, but I don't think that's an easy way to learn, because fly fishing is it's hard to learn, but it's not as hard as you think. It's intimidating. You don't have to make a long cast. You get there eventually. Just try. You don't have to buy the most expensive stuff. Just, my best advice is to find people that actively do what you want to pursue. And hey, can you help me? Could you lend me something? Could you show me the right way, or show me what to buy at least, and don't tell me to buy $1,000 able reel when you don't need that starting out. They're pretty, but asking for help, that's what it comes down to, is asking for help, especially in fly fishing, or something that does involve somebody teaching you. You got to have somebody teach you how to fly fish. I mean, you can self-teach yourself. I did, but it's not as fun. It takes a lot
Yeah,
longer.
that's awesome. I think that that's great advice. And the last thing that I want to ask you, staying in like the advice lane, is what is the one piece of advice, just overarching, that you want to leave people with before we close out the episode?
Yeah, I probably have a few. Do hard things, what I say to everybody. Do things that make you uncomfortable. But seriously, I do mean that. But I made a post about this today. Don't forget about the people that you served with. If you are already out and you're a vet, right? If you're still active and you're transitioning out, a lot of times people transition out in a place that they don't want to. Their leadership is, when you get out, the military is losing numbers, so obviously they get mad, but don't judge like the entire experience and the entire community off of whatever that transition looked like, especially who was directly around you. But my thing is, I did, and I didn't talk to anybody that I served with. None of the people that I deployed with, people that went through struggles, with me. And when I finally got back into the veteran community years later, I'm surrounding myself with all these other vets, and I didn't do my job, man. I failed in a way of reaching out to the people that I directly served with, and one of them called me the other day. I hadn't heard from him since 2014. He called me to apologize for us always bickering with each other and fighting. Like, we never saw eye to eye, and we went to basic together. We were in the same platoon, deployed to Afghanistan together. And sure, we didn't, get along as best as a lot of people, but he called me to apologize. I was like, dude, man, you don't need to apologize, brother, and I apologize that I didn't try to track you down. And so don't forget about, we all form these like incredible relationships, and I see it. The majority of people I know, their closest peers in the veteran space are not peers they served with. They're peers that they've met through nonprofits or just in passing or the local community. Don't forget about the people that you actually served with. It's something that I've done, and, we're all a community, and you can relate to those people more than anybody. I don't know if that's good
No,
advice,
I
but
think it's great advice, man. I think that, I mean, me going out and talking to folks like you all the time is one of the most empowering things. Like, that fills me up to just an extreme degree. And so I get it. I love being able to talk to vets and just hear their stories, and it's powerful, and I'm really grateful that I get to do it. So I completely agree and completely endorse what you're saying for people
yeah,
who are out there. So I
yeah.
agree. Thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been awesome. I really, really appreciate it. I wish that my mic setup looked as legit as yours did, but you know,
It's
I'm
all
not in a
right.
production company, so like I still have a webcam.
Yeah.
But
No, man, it's all good.
yeah.
It's all good, brother. You're doing it, dude. Like I bought a whole podcast. I've got a massive podcast set up below me, and I've never started a podcast because I procrastinate. You're doing it, bro. And that's a creative problem. Creatives,
hmm
they tend to, I need the best of the best, and I need the best idea, and I need this, and you're doing it. You're actively doing it, man. You're doing like what I'm doing in video. You're giving the voice to all
Trying.
these people to tell their story, and those people are now making connections. I never would have met Natasha. Now Natasha is going to be on the first all women's trip with the Two Wolf Foundation because I referred her
That's awesome.
to Brian and them. So that all came from you,
That's
bro.
awesome,
You
dude.
know, so you're doing this
I
this
appreciate it.
amazing thing, and yeah, dude, keep doing it. You know, and it's easy to bog down with analytics and be like, oh, not as many people are watching my film, or not as many people are listening as they are listening to Khloe Kardashian or one of those other idiots that nobody should even care about. No offense, but dude, man, like it's the real stories that you're given,
hmm
that you're hearing and you're talking, you know, with people, man.
I appreciate
That's
it.
what's important,
I
dude.
really appreciate it, man. Thank you. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. The Whether you've told your story 1,000 times or this is the first time you've ever done it, which I highly doubt, but the fact that you can come on here and talk through what you've gone through with such a positive attitude and a smile is just incredible to me. It's so powerful, and I I'm really, really grateful that you were nice enough to come on and share it one more time. From me and from all the listeners, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, Cameron.
Dude, I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for having me on, man. I just love talking to other vets, dude. You know,
I'm happy. I'm happy that I could give you another opportunity to do so. But that is the end of the episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you made it to the end, we really appreciate it. You all out there, the reason why I make these podcasts, and Cameron makes the films that he does. One more question though, Cameron. Where can people find you? Where should they go look?
yeah, for sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'll always promote LinkedIn, Cameron Cushman, just the name, and you'll find me on there. The website is wildwood.com, two V's instead of a W on the first wild part. And then the Instagram is just at Cameron Cush. So
Sweet.
spelled how you would
All
think.
those things will be tagged will be down in the description below this video, whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, whatever. So if you want to check him out, and I highly recommend you do, his videos are incredible, head down to the description. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button. That'll be cool. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for being here, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Post Military Podcast. Peace.